Well, welcome to all of you for our special meeting tonight. We will start with a Pledge of Allegiance that will be led by Dr. Vicki Carter. You know, just coming off of the Memorial Day weekend, it's so nice to be able to say that. And for me, it never gets old. I love saying the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're lucky to be able to say it 2 or 3 times a month. All right, we'll go right to community comments, and then we'll get into the action items for the meeting. And Molly, it's over to you. And if you want to bring the little guy with you, that's fine. Is that on?
Hello.
Just pick it out, because you're too tall.
There we go. I'll just tear it apart here.
That's good. Okay.
I just wanted to come, I had a couple of thoughts that I wanted to share with you. One specifically is about a meeting especially set apart for talking and studying about history. And is it? Okay.
Exactly.
There we
Yeah,
go.
there you go.
I have been very involved. I attended several of the meetings as this process has gone on. And I've also looked at when the numbers came out for the capital needs and the new numbers that were presented last board meeting. And I also looked at the things that have been voted for and the needs of our district. And when it comes right down to it, there have been needs that are not being met. And there have been needs that are being stopped. And when that happens, and when the board does not take care of the entire district, it makes it so the district is not going anywhere. And for that reason, I can see exactly why the municipalities have done what they've done and are putting on the ballot the different initiatives. And I fully support that because they have the ear of the people. And when the needs of a part of the district are not being met continuously, they're going to get mad. They're going to say enough, and they will split. And I have seen that happen over the last 6 months, and it is truly sad. But I am very, very glad that people are watching and taking care of each other and looking out for each other. Because this has become very, very political. And when it becomes very political, kids lose. But the city councils have gotten together and have seen the needs and have seen the numbers that you guys put out and the cities put out and have said, we can make a go of this. We're going to do this separately. We can do it well. And we have good examples from the past, and there are plenty of resources to go around. And these kids need the best. And so I humbly ask you guys to please take what the initiatives that the city councils have put forward very seriously, because
Thank you, Molly. All right, we have one action item on the agenda tonight, and I believe we're going to hear from Jason prior to that. Dr. Farnsworth, do you want to lead us through that?
Yes, we have, as our last board meeting, the board voted to send a possible two-district reconfiguration to the county for certification. We have received that back certified from the county, and we recommend that we begin this evening, that you pass the motion to initiate the public comment opportunity associated with a possible two-district configuration as outlined in state statute. Part of that statute requires us to share a feasibility of that reconfiguration, and so Jason, our business administrator, has a presentation to share with you specific to a two-district configuration and the feasibility associated with that. Then once he completes that, we'd recommend that the board can ask any questions they have, and then we recommend that we move forward on this to be able to follow that statute. And then if the board does approve that, I will share some future dates and processes that are outlined to comply with that statute.
Just one question before we begin. Have we confirmed that we have Sarah Beeson?
I was just going to say that.
Oh, okay.
We'd like to excuse two of our board members, Stacy Bateman and Sarah Beeson, who are both online, and maybe now is a good time to do a check to see if we're actually hearing them. So Stacy and Sarah, are you with us?
I'm here. We gotcha.
Okay,
Yep,
great.
we can hear.
All right, thank you, great. Thanks, Ada.
Thank you.
Is that better? Okay, it works. All right, so this, there'll be a few new slides from last week, or 2 weeks ago when we met. So there'll be some of the things I shared verbally but didn't show in slides. So there's not a lot of new information, but just organized a little bit different here. And so this just says the reconfiguration feasibility study. Here is the map that was sent to the county. So this is new to the slide deck. With the possible, so it'll say on each of these Alpine School District study, the two districts. So there'll still be some places where it may say option 3 for the two district, but there'll be some comparisons with options 1, 3, and 4. This information was shared previously. This was the reconciling between MGT's numbers and ASD calculations. Getting to that same when the October 1st, 22 data is used, then those percentages for the two district split are exactly the same, the 28.6, the 71.4, with moving the 543 students that live in Saratoga Springs but boundary for Lehigh schools. This slide was used previously. This is explaining how for FY23, Alpine's, what we calculated internally for the overhead cost per student, which is all costs not at a school location. So a district or a school administration would be a direct cost at the school locations, but administrative costs at the district level, at transportation, district office, purchasing, warehouse, those will be in the total there of the 164 million, and then divided by the 84,667 students. We shared last time that there's about 22 million in the overhead costs, which were utilities and summer collaboration grants. Removing that 22 million is a calculated $1,675 per student to compare with other districts that have their utilities paid at a school location. So the next 3 slides are going to go in more detail of this part of it. So there's going to be one for the about 60,000 students, about 40,000 students, and about 20,000 students. So this is the same information that was on the previous slide, but Alpine in FY22 had the enrollment of 84,666. actually on that one, it's calculated 1820. We're still using the 1935, a little bit higher. And there's the 1675 if used at the school locations. So Davis, of all the school districts in this analysis, Davis is the only other one that has utilities at the district level, and then the rest are at the school location. So how this table works, it's going to show, for example, Jordan at about 58,000 students. The FY22 Utah Taxpayers Association amount for the overhead cost per student is $2,071, and that's what it shows up here. So the difference between Alpine and Jordan isn't the 1935 to the 2071, it's the 1675, the 2071, which is 396. So for Davis, it's the difference between the 1935 and the 1996, $61. For Granite, it would be $13.21, the difference between these two, the $29.96 and the $16.75. But in each of these cases, the $60,000, $40,000, and the $20,000, the biggest difference from Alpine was removed to lower that average. The average is shown with that, but then a calculated here. So in this case, when you sum up the difference of 61, 1321, and 396, you get a difference, an average of 593. But removing the 1321, it's $229. These two districts, Davis and Jordan, $229 per student more than Alpine's when comparing at the same utility usage. What this shows is this 2034 was the average of Davis and Jordan, and 2035 was used in the calculations. So in this case, 2164 would be the 229 plus the 1935, but 2035 was used in this case. If we go to the 40,000 student, it's similar, except none of the other districts are at the district level paying the utilities, all located here. So again, it's not the difference between the 1935 and any of these numbers, it's the difference between the 1675 and all of these numbers that were posted in the Utah Taxpayers Association amount. So here are the differences from Alpine, so 396, 601, 92, 1370, and 154. The 1370 at Canyons was not used. These four averaged are at 311. So 1935 plus 311 is 2246. And in our calculations, which came originally from the average of these of 2200 was used, less than this average of 2246. And much less than the 2458 if Canyons was included. For the 20,000 student one, same thing, they're all the school locations. Here's the differences from Alpines. So the highest of Salt Lake, 1815 was removed, so a 537. So that 537 plus the 1935 is 2472, and this one originally was used at the 2470, which was close to this average when we first calculated. Any questions on these tables, how they work, or clarification needed?
So, I'm sorry, I'm probably not getting it. It's summer break with math. But the overhead used in the calculations is not the average. It's not the number. Where did that number come from?
So are you looking at this one of
I'm
the
looking at the
20,000?
far right number, the 2470.
So in each case, when we use this, so we'll go back to this one, 2034 was the average of these two, 2035, we just rounded to the nearest 5 or 10. So 2035 was this 2034, 2198 was 2200, and 2467 was 2470.
So we just averaged the taxpayers.
It was the original
Data.
one here. Yes, we could have gone back and said, well, now let's use this number instead in these cases. It would have put everything a little bit higher. We just left it on our original calculations because each of these is lower than the new calculated average when we figured out the utilities were different.
And that is the when we say original, we've had so many variations. So we're talking the data that was released after the MGT study, that next set is the original data.
Correct. Once we corrected for those students, so in this case, the 543 students, but the overhead cost per student did not change in any of the calculations from even prior to MGT study.
So I guess you could say the number that you're using is the most optimistic number, or
I mean,
most
what we've
conservative?
shown in there on each of the range, I mean, the most optimistic is staying where every district would stay at the 1935 per student. I did a few calculations today looking at that. And there's going to be some, regardless of anything, there's going to be duplication, like has been discussed. The superintendent, the business administrator, their admin secretaries, there's probably those 4 at least in every single district, right? The ones that, and so doubling or tripling those is going to add to the, you know, if you add up that total for those, or even I had the example of in my department, we have a accounting director, a budget director, and an assistant to both. Now, if you had smaller districts, you probably, you know, if you had 2 districts, you wouldn't need an assistant for those. It's smaller, a little less to be able to do. So there'd probably be a budget director and accounting director at each. So if you split into 2, you'd go from 4 administrators there to still having 4. But if you were to split into 3 districts, there may be a budget director and accounting director in each of those 3. So you went from 4 to 6. And then, so right now we have 4 in that case divided by 85,000 students. But if you had a smaller district, you may have 2 of those divided by 25,000, which is going to be more at a cost per student. So I think the best case is somewhere a little bit higher than the 1935 on decisions that would be made. And we show that range, and we show what it would be at the 1935, but we're showing a best guesstimate of where that's going to be based on other school districts in the state.
And so these are more realistic numbers based on mature school districts in the state of Utah. These are not fledgling, these are mature school districts.
And we tried to eliminate the highest. Like we said, each one has the highest delta removed, and just showing those.
Okay, thank you.
I just had, I thought it would be interesting to look back and see what Jordan and Canyon's overheads were. Unfortunately, the Utah Taxpayers Association, their historical reports are broken, the links, but that might be interesting too, is just if it was possible to get them. I actually sent them email and tried to, can you fix your website? But I've not heard back from them yet.
Yeah, figuring out before they split, and then being able to bring it into today's dollars, or.
Well, yeah, just to see the percentage difference would be interesting. But anyway, that
From
was,
before to went to after.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so these slides we should be able to go through pretty quickly. This used to say option 3, but now says Alpine School District Study. So this is the 2 district. So if in this case the 2470 is used for the west and the 2035 for the east, these are the numbers that come. So a surplus of 8.5 million in the west, deficit of 14.6 million in the east, and the increments that come from that savings or to make up that deficit. And I want to state again, in each of these, we're saying what new revenue would be needed to be able to break even, where it could be a combination of new revenue to bring that up and cutting expenses, or a combination there to be able to balance a budget there. Here are the calculations again. So if 1935 were to be realized for the West, the surplus would be $21.4 million surplus, and that shows the 8.5. An 8.5 deficit in the East going to a 14.6 with a higher overhead cost per student. Here, we've seen this before too, but this breaks down the 19% to the 81% on the adjusted taxable value for FY23, and the portion of debt and the amount of capital that could be generated from the existing capital levy. Also showing the projected enrollment and projected adjusted taxable values from FY23 to FY29. And an important point we made last time was just because the taxable value grows doesn't necessarily bring new revenue, because you're guaranteed the same revenue year over year. As values increase, the rate goes down. It's only the new growth that brings in additional revenue without going through truth in taxation to bring up the rate. This shows the look back to how actuals have happened for student growth and decline. This is the 543 students that currently live in Saratoga Springs but are boundary to Lehigh City Schools. This is the study of possible capital needs. So it was 512 million for the combined district. This shows a $277 million bond for the west and a 235 for the east. Could be in a geo bond, could be lease revenue, could be through increments. This just shows the estimated annual payment if it was all in bonds and the required increments for that. So that's all for the study that was put forth, which is option 3. Now there's this capital consideration summary is going to show the one district. There's the 512 million total amount. So six and a half increments to be able to do that currently, to be able to make those payments on a general obligation bond, about $180 per household on a $500,000 home. Here is the study of the 2 districts, we just saw a few slides before, and here's the option for the 3 districts. We also have the slides in here that if the high school was financed before any type of possible split happening, that there'd be that $45 million of interest savings. And so these are the amounts, the cost per household on those areas. So this is the option 3, or Alpine's current proposed study that was sent to the county. And here's the one for option 4, the 3 districts. Then this last, I believe, 6 slides is what we've seen before. Yeah.
On the lease revenue bonds and the geo bonds, did we account for the layering that we've currently used, meaning what geo bonds are going to fall off in the next couple of years?
Well, this would show the increase from wherever it would be. So this isn't showing from an existing, it's saying, okay, this is what it may drop down, but this is where it would be if this didn't happen. And so in any case, on an increase, it's from where it would be with those going off. When we go through, like last year in Truth and Taxation, it didn't say, what's your increase from last year's property tax rate? It's what's the increase from what it would be after the certified tax rate takes place. So when we submitted last year for the Truth and Taxation, where 4 increments in capital and 3 in operations were put forward, it was showing a 13.65% tax increase, which wasn't from the previous year's tax rate. It was from where the would be after the certified tax rate process. So the layering is going to happen how it will. And that is shown, we can be able to, we've shown that in the ACFR. It shows how much is due on all bonds going forward. So that's all on there to be able to see how those are coming off. This year, we're expecting about 3 increments, but for the next 4 or 5 years after that, it's about a 1 increment drop in the debt service.
But this year we're expecting 3 or 4?
3,
3.
but we captured that last year by reducing it 3. We can do 3 again, reducing the debt service, but it's going to pull down our fund balance in that fund. But there is fund balance available there. Okay, so this, there's going to be a west, central, and east, and then another west, central, and east here. This is going to be the one if with the high school financed in the future, and then the last 3 will be financed before any reconfiguration. So this shows that if the district were to stay together but have to do $512 million of bonding, it would be a 7.65% tax increase above where it's going to be, not above where it is currently. Then for the proposed option 3, the 2-district split, that changes from a 7.65 for the west to a 19.7, and the same thing with option 4 being the same configuration for the west. The central, same 7.65% for one district, splitting into two districts, and east-west would be a 12.32% over what it would fall to, or in this case, about 5% higher than staying together as one district. And then option 4, the last one there, a little bit higher, about 4% higher than the two district split. For the east, the same 7.65, going to 12.32 and 22.02 to make up that deficit of 16 million, and having 4.36 increments for a $125 million bond.
So Jason, is this 22.02, is that what used to be 24.75?
The 24.75 might be in 2 slides when you have the part that's financing the high school before a split.
Okay.
Right there. Yeah. Okay, so the next slide is the west with the high school finance before any type of reconfiguration. So there's 6.84 because of the savings in the interest of 45 million. So 6.84 for the district altogether, going to 3.35% tax increase if the deficit is 8.5 million, or the surplus is 8.5 million, and there's $44.8 million bonding that takes place. So that's the west in both those. The central would still be the 6.84 to match the last slide, 15.06% increase in a 2-district split and a 19.18 in a 3-district. And then the last slide here showing that 24.75, because the bonding amount, if you look here on the east, went from 125 to 168. That is the last slide for this presentation. When we post this PDF online, there'll be some backup, which will have all the information that was previously shared for options 1 and options 4, and the information on, like this, the capital investments by area, the facilities. So those will all be included in the backup, the RDA summary, special schools, and then the overhead cost per student. Any other questions, clarification needed?
Okay, I think we are ready for a motion to initiate the public comment opportunity associated with the possible 2-district configuration. Do I have a motion?
I move that we initiate the public comment opportunity associated with a possible 2-district configuration.
And do I have a second?
I second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved by Ada and Mark, and seconded by Mark. Ada, since you made the motion, would you like to make any associated comments?
I would. First of all, I found this statement in the annual comprehensive budget. It says, "A district is a legally separate entity possessing all rights and privileges affording to political subdivisions of the state of Utah. The district is fiscally independent. Policymaking and legislative authority are vested in the Board of Education." I just want to emphasize that we are the governing board over public schools in this area, and I would hope that that authority would be recognized. In any other scenario, it would be illegal to usurp that authority. And in this case, it is in code that cities have a right to intercede in this process. But I believe that that process should never be activated when a district is undergoing the process that we have undertaken in good faith. I think there are 3 methods for dividing a district in code, but they were never intended to be used simultaneously. And what I see, what I do see is that there is a definite push to split the district, but I believe that it's based on claims that have no basis. And One of those is that there is an imbalance in representation. Got to get my notes here. The claim has been that there's a representation imbalance that can only be solved by a three-way split, and I don't believe that that is true. There's, first of all, a claim that representation should be based on the number of children rather than the number of voters, and this is just not how it is set up in law. Children don't vote for representatives, they don't pay taxes, and they don't pass bonds. It is adult voters who bear this responsibility, and it must be their numbers upon which representation is based. I think that it doesn't matter how you divide a district, you can never get and assure that representation is going to be based on the number of children. It's also been claimed that our representation is not balanced because the population is so rapidly changing. And I think this is true, but the law says that we have to adjust every 10 years based on the census data, but it does not say that we can't make adjustments in the intervening years. And that being said, we have made an adjustment just 2 years ago. And we can't make adjustments based on projections. We have to make adjustments based on actual numbers. And I believe that that can happen, but to say that it needs to be done right now and that it's somehow the board's fault that that is the way it is, I think, a false narrative. It's also claimed that representation is unbalanced when you don't agree with what the board members are saying. And even as we're carrying out this process of configuring this configuration study and building schools in the West, I don't think it's fair to say that you aren't being represented well. I think in our representative democracy, if you think that your opinions are not being representative, you have the opportunity and you have the responsibility to thoughtfully advocate for your position. And I think that is true in the school board, that anyone has the right to talk to their school board member and to advocate for their position. But to say that you are not being represented is not correct.
Yeah, Mark, you seconded. Would you like to make a comment, and then let's open it up to other board members?
Sure. I just think as I've been meeting with patrons and looking at this discussion of reconfiguration, I think one of the points that is often brought up is, will Alpine District be able to cope with building new schools and taking care of upgrading schools where needed? And I just think it's maybe just to enlighten our public, we actually, before the last bond, we did kind of a 10-year capital plan in our capital planning committee, and we looked at where schools needed to be built. We needed another elementary in the West. We needed a junior high in the West, and we have a planned high school in the West too, and as well as some needed improvements in the East. And I guess as I looked through that capital plan, we have really been able to execute on almost all of those elements, even though we did not have the bond money to do that. And I think this is just a testament to answer the question, can Alpine build new schools and maintain the buildings that we have? Or do we need some kind of a split to rectify that? And from my perspective, we've done really good. We've been able to build this elementary and a junior high in progress in the West. We've purchased land for the high school and are well on the way to a plan that would save $45 million over a previous plan. So I think we're being good stewards over taxpayer money, trying to do it in a not to overbuild, but to try to take care of student needs as they come. I think we Pleasant Grove High School, which has need of some upgrades. Again, we spent a lot of money upgrading the heating and ventilation system there. In essence, just when we find things that need to be done, Alpine District takes care of them and we meet the needs of students. There's also been questions about, are we closing schools rapidly enough? And it turns out that closing schools in the east is, even if we closed all the ones we've ever thought of closing, it doesn't provide the funding necessary to build new schools in the west. But we have closed four schools in the east and created stronger combined schools that are doing a better job of educating students. And so I guess if I was just to talk about the state of the district as we contemplate a reconfiguration, it's probably, we can't say that we have to do a reconfiguration to meet capital needs, because I think we've shown that we actually can do that and that we've moved forward in those areas to meet those needs responsibly.
Okay, other public comments or other board comments?
I'll go ahead and comment if no one's commenting yet. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, is this Sarah?
Yeah, sorry,
Yes.
it's Sarah.
Okay, thank you, go ahead.
I've mentioned this before, my concern with the interlocal agreements. And I just feel like there's just been a lack of data to support the city's supposition that their citizens want a split. They haven't yet, they have yet to poll their cities. And I'm just going to reiterate my support of cities hiring a third-party independent research firm to poll their citizens on their opinions regarding a three-way split. And I fear that the city representatives may be getting ahead of their public. And these interlocal agreements are moving forward, and it seems without a lot of public opinion. And when I talk about public opinion and polling, I'm not really talking about the city open houses or hearings or even Facebook surveys. I'm talking about data. And as I look at our data, the summary says that 57% of the respondents supported staying as a single consolidated district. 57%. 24% supported a two-way split, and only 19% supported a three-way. When you break down the data even a little more, in all the 10 clusters, the three-way split was the least preferred. And so I'm just having a hard time of why we would go against the public and what they want, the staff recommendation to go ahead and support a three-way. When respondents in the MGT study were asked about potential tax changes, 67% said that would impact their opinion. And as we've studied the data, and we understand that the East could face a possible 15.6% to a 24.75% tax increase, and that my area could, see a possible 15.6% to a 19.18% property tax increase, I totally understand the concerns. I believe that ASD's data better reflects where people sit on the issue. We're being told that a three-way split is what people want, but there's no data or statistics to back that. We've always said that as a board that we are a data-driven board, and I believe that our district has provided the data, but I can't in good conscience make decisions that are based on 50 city representatives in a district over 84,000 families in our community. And I've also heard that there's a narrative out there that the cities that are participating in an interlocal voted to do so unanimously. But remember that in some cases, there were cities that felt like they had no choice but to vote in the affirmative because they couldn't be left alone and be their own school district. So not all the city council members were pushing for an interlocal. And so the bottom line to me is that a three-way split feels like a great experiment with our students and with our teachers. And I feel like there are more questions and concerns than answers with the three-way split. So I would be willing to stick my neck out more if there was data that supported that of what the majority of the citizens want, but there isn't such data.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Other comments? Julie, you were edging toward your microphone.
Yeah, I was not prepared for this. I was under the impression that we were just gonna take a vote and not rehash the three-way versus the two-way thing. I take exception to some of this, that the claims being made have no basis. I absolutely disagree with that in an area where representation is a massive concern and it has been for years. I will also say that yes, the district did redistrict seats 2 years ago, as we were legally required to do after the census. I know of no situation in which the district has ever initiated redistricting of school board seats outside of that legal requirement. I have a hard time with some of the dynamics about what feels like a minimizing of the issue of growth, because it is significant. KSL just did an article recently about how Lehigh had the largest growth in 1 year, followed by Saratoga Springs and Eagle Mountain, and that those three cities represented 3/4 of the growth in all of Utah County. The growth issue is not going away. And as far as the building issue, I would invite you to my schools. And that's all I guess I'm going to say about that. I understand the desire for a poll. That's what the vote is. Your vote is that is the poll. I also disagree with the idea that if city council members were not supportive of an option or an interlocal, they should have had the integrity to cast a vote that expressed that. And if they failed to do that, that's their responsibility. There are significant concerns that are not being addressed. I think Molly nailed it when she said we have students and needs are not being met. And whether you see a district reconfiguration as a solution to that or not, we can disagree or debate. But I take exception with the way that some of this is being characterized. I think that the focus for everyone involved is about trying to meet the needs of students. And I think to characterize it as anything else than that is not productive and it's not helpful.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I'm just going to speak to the motion at hand to initiate public comment opportunities, and I ready the opportunity to listen to public on the possible reconfiguration.
Thank you. Are we ready for a vote?
Sarah, I have a comment.
Yes, go ahead.
So I too thought that this motion was just about opening the public comment period, but I will say that I think it's incredibly disingenuous to disregard concerns of our municipalities and our residents. I think this is exactly the reason why we're in this situation. So just really disappointed in the comments that I've heard tonight, and also in terms of the polling, that's what the vote is, right? And so I think it's interesting that Board Member Beeson said that 50 city leaders are not representative of 84,000 kids, and yet the 7 of us are supposed to be. So I look forward to us having information sessions and hearings for the public to share the response, and hope that board members will be open and willing to listen to what the people have to say.
Thank you, Stacy. As I understand it, the vote that we're taking right now is to initiate a public comment period, which is required by law. And if we do pass that, then I think Dr. Farnsworth will elaborate on that just a little bit. But I want to emphasize that the purpose of this 45-day period is twofold. One is to inform the public and answer their questions, and one is to inform the board and answer their questions. And so it works both ways. And so we have got a motion by Ada and a second by Mark to initiate the public comment opportunity associated with the possible 2 district configurations. Let's take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, the motion passes. Thank you. Dr. Farnsworth.
Yes, thank you, President Hacken. As stated, this begins, there's been some confusion. This is not a vote to put a configuration on the ballot. This is a vote to begin the process to receive public feedback on the proposition to consider a configuration on the ballot. As part of that process, there is opportunity for public feedback. There's a 45-day window as outlined in state statute, which includes 2 public hearings. There will be a public hearing on June 11th and another one on June 25th. The June 11th will be part of a regularly scheduled board meeting here at the district office. There will actually be 3 public hearings that evening for the just concluded school year budget, the upcoming budget, and then the reconfiguration. On the 25th, there will just be 1 public hearing, and that will be for the reconfiguration feedback. The public is welcome to submit feedback to the board via email. We have a feedback button on the district website that the public can give feedback to, and we will make sure that the board members receive that feedback. And then prior to each of those public hearings, information about the reconfiguration will be made available in the lobby for the public to come review prior to giving comment in a public hearing. So that's the process. Currently, we are scheduled for a July 16th board meeting. The end of the 45-day period, which begins today, would be on July 12th. The following Tuesday, that's a Friday, the following Tuesday we have scheduled a board meeting. It is anticipated that the board could take action at that point on whether or not to put a configuration on the ballot. The statute reads that we must act within 14 days of that closing of the 45-day public input period.
Okay,
Could-
thank you.
Could we confirm the location on June 25th?
Lake Mountain Middle School
Lake Mountain. Okay.
in Saratoga Springs.
And June 11th will be here at the district office.
Both of those will begin, the hearings will begin at 6 o'clock. We will also publish the time for the public to come review that information about reconfiguration.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think our business has been concluded for the evening unless there are further questions. So I need a motion to adjourn.
Can I just make a quick comment? For the June 25th one, it's going to be at 6 o'clock at Lake Mountain. I would just encourage the public, if they're planning to attend, to plan for appropriate time, because that tends to be a very heavily trafficked time. And so you want to make sure you leave, for anyone attending, make sure that there's plenty of time to deal with increased traffic.
Very good point, thank you. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion from Joy Lynn and a second from Ada to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. This meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.